So it was in, if we can go back to 1949, shortly after the end of World War II, China was not a superpower, right? It was not a prosperous nation. It was totally undeveloped with very few paved roads. It was even a literacy rate that was less than 9%. It was one of the poorest countries on earth, with only 10 countries having a lower per capita GDP. It had just come out of a revolutionary war from which arose the Communist People's Republic of China under Chairman Mao Zedong. Because of this, Washington cut ties completely with China, as did much of the world, leaving it to languish in squalor. In other words, it was a dump. It was a threat to who? To no one. Excuse me. So fast forward to 2023, what in the world happened? How has China risen from one of the poorest countries in the world to one of the richest? It has grown so much that it now contends for the world's largest superpower, right? With the drive and capabilities to literally wage war against the United States of America. How can such a thing happen? Do you want to know who is to blame? It's us. Do you want to know who is to blame? It's America. America is the one culprit to blame for the emergence of China on the world stage. America, and I'll say its influence over the World Trade Organization, which, that is the WTO. You see, the trade between China and the U.S. exploded over the last 2 decades, and it comes as a result of China joining the World Trade Organization, which they joined in 2001. I think it's important. It's a really interesting article. I think every paragraph has something important to say. I don't usually like reading, 5 paragraphs all at one time, but it's important. So here's a little history from the Council on Foreign Relations official website on the subject. So what is the history of the U.S.-China trade relationship? For 30 years following the establishment of the People's Republic of China in 1949, there was virtually no trade between the two countries, as Washington had severed ties with the communist government in Beijing. In 1979, the United States and China normalized relations, prompting an explosion of trade over the next 4 decades, from a few $1 billion worth to hundreds of billions of dollars annually. China also began a decades-long process of economic reform in the 1970s under the leadership of Deng Xiaoping. His government loosened state control over the economy and allowed private industry to develop. Chinese policymakers aimed to boost trade and investment, and in 1986, Beijing applied to rejoin the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, which is the WTO's predecessor. Now, after protracted negotiations with the United States and other WTO members, China joined the WTO in December of 2001. As a condition of admission, Beijing committed to a sweeping set of economic reforms, including steep tariff cuts for imported goods, protections for intellectual properties, and transparency around its laws and regulations. Now, at the time, U.S. President Bill Clinton and his advisors contended that bringing China into the global trading system would not only benefit the United States, but also foster economic and ultimately democratic reform in China. Real win.
Yeah, so much for that.
Yeah. Still, the move was opposed by U.S. labor unions and many congressional Democrats, the real Democrats of older years, right?
Yeah.
Not the socialist Marxist Democrats of today. Your granddad's Democratic Party, which I would have still been a Republican, but still I understand them more back then, who argued that China's weak worker and environmental protections would incentivize similar practices elsewhere and bring about a race to the bottom. What Wow. So even before China joined the WTO, trade between the two countries had been growing at an incremental rate, right? Since '79, but it was in 2001 that everything changed. But
Right.
WTO membership ensured permanent, normal trade relations, thereby providing U.S. and foreign companies additional certainty that they could produce in China and export to the United States. Trade surged. How much? Well, here we go. The value of U.S. goods imports from China rose from $100 billion in 2001 to $500 billion in 2021. And that number was over $600 billion, close to $600 billion last year. This leap in imports is due in part to China's critical position in global supply chains, Chinese factories. Oh, here we go. Chinese factories assemble products for export to the United States using components from all over the world. So we have taken it from America, utilized the Chinese factories that were built and made for our products so that they can now ship us to the United States and all over the world. Oh, gosh, well, for such a drastic thing, the benefits have to outweigh the cons, right?
You would think.
Yeah. So what are the benefits of this trade? Well, U.S. consumers have benefited from lower prices, and U.S. companies have profited immensely from access to China's market. Whoa! Whoa! You mean major U.S. companies with the power and the influence and the capital to lobby for this to be done profited greatly at selling our independence down the river to China? Never. And all given legs under Democratic President Bill Clinton? Wow. I want to show you something. Let's take a look at this graph that shows China's GDP, and it goes all the way back to the early 1960s. You're going to see an interesting curve in this graph. Let's take a look. There's the graph. You can see it on your screen. We typed in, you have the 10-year option, 25, 50-year, and the max. We clicked there, the max, and the very first date given is 1963. You can see that China's GDP from 1963 all the way to 1976, pretty flat. 76 to 1989, pretty flat. Now the next number is 2002. You can see, oh, there's a little bit of an increase there. What's going on? And, well, China did rejoin the WTO in 2001. And what happened? Look at that. An absolute explosion of growth. We created this monster, people. We did. The reason China is a threat is because of America. Listen, people. That snake was dying, but it was nourished back to health and is now preparing to bite us.
The snake lyric. On her way to work one morning, down the path along the lake, a tender-hearted woman saw a poor, half-frozen snake. Interesting. His pretty colored skin had been all frosted with the dew. Oh, well, she cried, I'll take you in, and I'll take care of you. Take me in, O tender woman. Take me in, for heaven's sake. Take me in, O tender woman. Sighed the vicious snake. She wrapped him up cozy in a curvature of silk, and then laid him by the fireside with some honey and some milk. Now she hurried home from work, and that night, as soon as she arrived, she found that pretty snake she'd taken and revived. Take me in, O tender woman. Take me in, for heaven's sake. Take me in, O tender woman, sighed the vicious snake. Now she clutched him to her bosom. You're so beautiful, she cried. But if I hadn't brought you in, by now you might have died. She stroked his pretty skin, and then she kissed and held him tight. But instead of saying thank you, that snake gave her a vicious bite. Take me in, O tender woman. Take me in, for heaven's sake. Take me in, O tender woman, sighed the vicious snake. I saved you, cried the woman, and you've bit me. Heavens, why? You know your bite is poisonous, and now I'm going to die. Oh, shut up, silly woman, said the reptile with a grin. You knew damn well I was a snake before you took me in. Does that make sense to anybody?